I was 8 centimeters dilated, shaking in a hospital bed, when my husband walked in, didn't ask if I was okay, and told me to sign divorce papers. I thought the pain couldn't get worse. I was wrong. I was 23 when I got married to Daniel Carter. Not because I loved him madly, though I told myself I did. Not because he swept me off my feet with grand gestures or promises. I married him because I was tired. Tired of sleeping on my cousin's couch. Tired of working double shifts at the diner just to afford community college classes I was too exhausted to focus on. Tired of being invisible. Daniel worked at an auto parts store. He had his own apartment, small but his. He paid his bills on time. He didn't drink much. He said he wanted a family someday. When he proposed after 6 months of dating, I said yes because it felt like the first stable thing I'd ever been offered. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. No siblings. No inheritance except debt. I'd been on my own ever since, and Daniel seemed like solid ground. If you've ever felt like you're just trying to survive, not thrive, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear how this story unfolds, because it gets darker before it gets better. The first year was fine. We lived simply. I worked at the diner, he worked at the shop. We split rent. We watched TV on a couch we'd found on the curb and reupholstered ourselves. It wasn't much, but it was mine, ours. Then I got pregnant. I hadn't planned it. We'd been careful, mostly. But life doesn't always wait for permission. When I told Daniel, his face went blank. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Okay, we'll figure it out." But he didn't say he was happy. He didn't hug me. He just nodded. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. He started staying late at work. He stopped asking about my day. When I talked about the baby, about names, about nursery ideas, about how scared I was, he'd just grunt and turn up the TV. I told myself it was stress. Men process things differently, right? He'd come around. I kept working at the diner until I was 7 months pregnant. My feet swelled so badly I could barely fit into my shoes. My back ached constantly. But we needed the money, and Daniel made it clear that his paycheck alone wouldn't cover a baby. One night, I came home after a 10-hour shift to find him on the couch with his phone. He didn't look up. "Hey," I said, lowering myself carefully into the chair across from him. "How was your day?" "Fine." Silence. "Daniel, can we talk?" He finally looked at me. His expression was cold. "About what?" "About us. About the baby. You've been so distant, and I'm tired, Claire. I work all day too, you know." "I know. I'm just saying." "What do you want me to say?" His voice was sharp now. "That I'm thrilled? That this is what I wanted?" The words hit me like a slap. "I thought we both." "You thought wrong." He stood up, shoving his phone in his pocket. "I'm going out." He left. I sat there, 8 months pregnant, alone in our dim apartment, and cried until I had nothing left. That was the beginning. The arguments became more frequent. He accused me of trapping him, of ruining his life, of being a burden. He stopped touching me, stopped looking at me really. I became a ghost in my own home. I should have left. I know that now. But where would I have gone? I had $300 in savings. No family. No close friends. I'd lost touch with everyone while working myself to exhaustion. And I was about to have a baby. So I stayed. I endured. I told myself it would get better once the baby came. It didn't. I went into labor on a Tuesday morning. My water broke while I was folding laundry. I called Daniel at work. "It's time," I said, trying to keep my voice steady through the contractions. "Can you come home? I'm in the middle of something. Can you call an Uber?" "Daniel, I'm in labor." "Claire, I can't just leave. I'll meet you there, okay?" He hung up. I called an Uber with shaking hands. The driver, a kind older woman, kept asking if I was okay. I lied and said yes. At the hospital, they admitted me quickly. The contractions were coming fast. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. A tearing, relentless agony that made me feel like my body was splitting apart. I kept asking the nurses if my husband had arrived. They kept saying no. 3 hours into labor, Daniel finally showed up. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask how I was. He walked into the room, looked at me in the hospital bed, and his face was nothing. Empty. "Daniel," I gasped between contractions. "I'm so glad we need to talk." "Now." "Yes, now." A nurse glanced at him with disapproval, but said nothing. He pulled a folded stack of papers from his jacket pocket. "I need you to sign these." I stared at him, not understanding. "What?" "Divorce papers." The room tilted. I thought I'd heard him wrong. "What?" "I can't do this, Claire. I don't want to be a father. I don't want to be married. I want out." Another contraction seized me, and I cried out. The nurse moved closer, checking the monitors. "You're bringing this up now?" I managed to say. "You're going to have the baby whether I'm here or not. But I need you to sign this so we can move on." "Move on?" I was sobbing now from pain and shock. Daniel, I'm about to give birth to your child. Sign it, Claire. I can't even. My vision blurred. I can't think right now. Just sign it. Please. His voice was almost pleading, but it wasn't out of emotion. It was impatience. He wanted this over with. I know some of you are feeling that anger right now. If you're invested in this story, drop a comment and let me know. Don't forget to like, because you'll want to see what happens next. The nurse stepped in. Sir, this is highly inappropriate. Your wife is in active labor. It's between us, he said flatly. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I was in so much pain I couldn't think straight. Maybe because some part of me just wanted him to stay, even if it meant agreeing to this nightmare. Maybe because I was too exhausted to fight. I took the pen. I signed my name on the line he pointed to, tears streaming down my face, my hand shaking so badly I could barely write. He took the papers immediately, folded them, and put them back in his jacket. Thank you, he said. Then he turned and walked out. I gave birth 4 hours later. Alone. My daughter, Emma, came into the world screaming. They placed her on my chest, and I looked down at her tiny red face and felt something break and heal inside me at the same time. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. But I wasn't empty. I had her. The first few months were brutal. I lived in a crumbling one-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. Daniel paid nothing, no child support, no alimony, nothing. I didn't even try to chase him for it. I had no money for a lawyer, and the thought of seeing him again made me physically ill. I worked nights at a gas station while Emma slept in a playpen behind the counter. My manager, an older man named Frank, had a soft spot for me and looked the other way. During the day, I slept when she slept, which was never long enough. I was always tired, always broke, always afraid. But I kept going. Emma was 6 months old when I got a letter in the mail. The return address was from a law firm in another state. I almost threw it away, thinking it was a debt collector. But something made me open it. Dear Ms. Carter, we represent the estate of Margaret Delilah Hartley. Our records indicate that you are the sole surviving heir to Ms. Hartley's estate. We have been attempting to locate you for several months. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss the details of your inheritance. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. Margaret Hartley. My grandmother. My mother's mother. I'd never met her. My mother had been estranged from her family long before I was born. I didn't even know she'd existed until I was a teenager and found an old photograph tucked into a book. My mother as a child, standing beside an elegant older woman with sharp eyes. When I'd asked my mom about it, she'd gone quiet. That's my mother, she'd said. We don't talk. She never explained why, and I never pushed. Now she was dead, and apparently I was her heir. I called the law firm the next day, my hands shaking as I dialed. The lawyer, a woman named Ms. Brennan, was kind but formal. She explained that my grandmother had been estranged from my mother due to a family conflict decades ago. But before she died, she'd hired investigators to locate any surviving family. She wanted to make amends, Ms. Brennan said. She left everything to you. Everything. Her estate, yes. Properties, investments, personal accounts. The total valuation is approximately $1.3 billion. I dropped the phone. It took me weeks to process. Weeks of meetings with lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. Weeks of paperwork and verification. Weeks of disbelief. I didn't tell anyone. Not the neighbors, not Frank, not the few acquaintances I had. I kept working at the gas station. I kept living in my crumbling apartment. I didn't trust it yet. Didn't believe it was real. But slowly, carefully, I began to set things up. I moved the money into trusts and accounts. I hired a financial manager who came highly recommended. I made plans, but I didn't change my life. Not yet. I needed to think. For 2 years, I lived quietly. I moved to a slightly better apartment. Nothing fancy, just safer. I quit the gas station and got a day job at a library, so I could be with Emma more. I saved aggressively, even though I didn't need to. Old habits. I kept my head down. I watched Emma grow. I healed slowly from the trauma of what Daniel had done. And then one afternoon I saw him. I was at a grocery store with Emma, who was now 3 years old and chattering nonstop about everything she saw. I turned down the cereal aisle and froze. Daniel was standing there, staring at boxes of cornflakes. He looked older, tired. His clothes were worn. He had a cart with a few basic items, ramen, bread, canned soup. My heart pounded. Emma tugged on my hand. Mama, I want the one with the tiger. Daniel looked up. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then his face shifted, surprise, confusion, recognition. Claire. I didn't answer. I took Emma's hand and started to turn away. Wait, he stepped toward me. Claire, wait. Please. I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need to see what he'd say. It's been a long time, he said quietly. Yes. He looked at Emma, and something flickered in his expression. Is that? Yes. He swallowed. She's beautiful. I said nothing. Look, Claire, he ran a hand through his hair. I've thought about you. About her. About what I did. Have you? I was a coward. I was scared and I ran and his voice cracked. I've regretted it every day since. I stared at him, waiting. I know I have no right to ask, but he looked desperate now. I lost my job a year ago. I've been struggling. I can't make rent. I'm about to be evicted and He stopped, looked at me like I was a life raft. I heard you're doing better. Frank told me you were working at a library, that you'd moved to a better place. I thought, maybe, if you could help me. Just a loan. Just enough to get back on my feet. The audacity of it hit me like a truck. This man who had handed me divorce papers while I was in labor, who had walked out and never looked back, who had paid nothing, done nothing, been nothing. Now he wanted my help. Emma pulled on my hand again. Mama, can we go? I looked down at my daughter, her bright eyes, her trust, her innocence. Then I looked back at Daniel. No, I said simply. Claire, please. You made a choice, Daniel. You chose to leave. You chose to sign away your responsibilities. You chose to walk away from your daughter. I was young, I was stupid. So was I. But I stayed. His face crumpled. I don't have anywhere else to turn. Then you'll figure it out. Like I did. I turned and walked away. Emma skipped beside me, oblivious, chattering about tigers. Behind me, I heard him call my name once more. I didn't turn around. That night, after I put Emma to bed, I sat on my couch and cried. Not for him. Not for what could have been. I cried because I'd finally done it. I'd finally stood up. I'd finally said no. The next morning, I made a decision. I called Ms. Brennan and told her I was ready to start using the estate funds for something meaningful. I wanted to establish a foundation, something to help single mothers, women who were where I'd been, desperate, alone, terrified. We created a program that provided emergency housing, childcare assistance, job training, and legal aid. We funded shelters and community centers. We helped hundreds of women rebuild their lives. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I knew what it felt like to have nothing. And I knew what it meant to finally have a choice. I never saw Daniel again. I heard through Frank years later that he'd left town, that he'd struggled for a while, moved in with a relative, eventually found work somewhere else. I felt nothing when I heard that. No satisfaction. No anger. Nothing. He'd become irrelevant. Emma is 10 now. She's smart, funny kind. She knows her father left before she was born. She knows we struggled for a while. She knows we're okay now. She doesn't know about the money. Not yet. Someday I'll tell her. But for now, I want her to grow up with the values I learned the hard way. Resilience, empathy, gratitude. I think about that day in the hospital sometimes. The way Daniel put those papers in front of me while I was in the worst pain of my life. The way he walked out without looking back. I think about how he thought I had nothing. That I was nothing. He was wrong. I wasn't nothing. I was surviving. And survival, I've learned, is its own kind of power. Endurance outlasts cruelty. Silence was never weakness. And healing, in the end, is the best revenge. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of survival and strength. Your support means everything. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's struggling, someone who feels powerless, someone who just needs hope, share this story with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're stronger than we think.